I was just going to tell you,
Yeah.
I was just inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's on my webpage yet.
Oh my
so
gosh.
just
Congratulations.
Let me
with
see.
United States Supreme Court Justice
Yes.
Sonia Sotomayor.
I have it on
Wow.
here.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right, good.
We're trying to
Okay.
keep current.
Because
Good.
that
Okay.
is incredible.
Okay.
All
All right, good.
all right.
You're ready.
It is. The people who do your website are fast.
Okay.
Yes. I was telling Scott that. All right. Okay, here we go. Gloria Allred is the most famous Gloria Allred is the most famous woman attorney practicing law in the nation today. She is a tireless and successful advocate for victims whose rights have been violated. Her high-profile legal battles have led to many landmark precedent-setting court decisions and hundreds and millions of... I'm going to do that one more time. Gloria Allred is the most famous woman attorney practicing law in the nation today. She is a tireless and successful advocate for victims whose rights have been violated. Her high-profile legal battles have led to many landmark precedent-setting court decisions and hundreds of millions of dollars for her clients. When a high-profile legal case hits the airwaves, we have become accustomed to seeing Gloria Allred in some key role as attorney or commentator. But this nationally recognized advocate has built her pioneering career on much more than O.J. Simpson and Amber Frey. As a tireless crusader against discrimination in all areas of our lives. Allred's legal reach has been wide and long. For the past 4 decades, she has played an integral role in combating injustices and winning new rights, especially for children and minorities. Naming all of her awards, honors, and accolades would literally take up our whole interview time. But I think it's important to say that in 2015, Gloria was given the LG Award for her decades-long commitment to secure equality for the LGBT community. And in September of this year, Gloria was inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame along with Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, activist Angela Davis, and actor-activist Jane Fonda. Also, about that documentary, Seeing Allred, my dear friend Robbie Tolan was one of the producers, and I want to take a second to thank her for connecting me with Gloria and making this interview possible. Thank you, Robbie. So, Gloria, before we start your interview, curious if you eat breakfast.
Always.
You do?
Of course.
Okay, did you have breakfast today?
Always.
What did you have today?
Today I had some kashi cereal with almond milk.
Yum.
That's it.
And so that...
Usually I have some fruit, but I was out of fruit this morning and I didn't have time to go get it.
All right. Well, that's a good endorsement for kashi cereal right there. We'll be buying some of that. Power breakfast for a powerful woman. All right. So I'm going to ask you to finish the sentence for me. I was the only one in the room who?
Well, for 43 years, we have been a feminist law firm and the leading women's rights law firm in the United States. So I think I'm the only one in the room that has that record of success as a women's rights, minority rights law firm for 43 years with the same partners for 43 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And before we go any further, I just have to tell you again what an honor it is to sit in front of you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being invited.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Oh,
So cool.
makes me so happy.
So,
Scott calls you a superhero, and all superheroes have an origin story. And from what that story tells you, like how they gain their powers and why they're fighting crime, from what I can gather, your origin story began in Acapulco when you were in your 20s. Is that correct?
well, I think my origin story is really an evolution
Okay.
as opposed to one moment in time, because I think all of us have life experiences as women that it becomes like a snowball effect, and all of a sudden there's a point at which we realize, wait, it wasn't just my bad luck. It isn't something to do with me. There is something happening in the world where this can happen to women. Whether it's gender violence, whether it's pay inequity, whether it is discrimination in education, whatever it is, a combination of the above.
Yeah.
Inability of the system to assist in obtaining child support, so single moms are forced into lives of poverty. Whatever it is, it's an accumulation. And I think the aha moment came for me when I finally was an attorney and I began to see so many women coming to me with similar stories. They didn't know each other. So I saw a pattern of discrimination. I saw the system failing, and I realized that we needed to win change, and we had to fight for that change because nobody was going to give it to us.
Yeah. Well, you fight for the rights of a lot of people who have been the victims of sexual violence. And the story in Acapulco, the one I was referring to, you were a victim of sexual violence there.
I was a victim of gender violence, sexual violence,
Mm-hmm.
which is sexual assault or rape at gunpoint. And of course, it was totally unexpected. It was shocking, especially because it was a medical doctor. Not someone I would ever think would do that if I went out on a date with him.
Right.
Not someone I thought would have a gun. And yes, that definitely was life-changing. And also it helped me to understand years later other women who thought no one's going to believe me if I go to the police or I tell someone. So there's no point going to the police in Mexico because this is a person of power. This is an authority figure, and who am I? I'm in my 20s. Nobody's ever heard of me. I'm an American. Why would anyone believe me against what was sure to be the denial of a Mexican doctor? So I completely get it when women say, I didn't think I'd be believed, and that's why I didn't tell anyone.
Of course. I was really struck by that. I'm so glad you talked about that because I was going to ask you about that. Because knowing who you are and what you've done and what you've accomplished, it's hard to believe that you didn't think that you would be believed then.
Well, when I was in my 20s, I didn't have the knowledge that I do now.
Right.
And so I was like a lot of young women. I didn't know anybody except, people in my family and, a few people, friends that I had, co-workers. But no, I can understand
Right.
why women would think they're not believed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this was pre-Roe v. Wade.
This was pre-Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is the 1973 United States Supreme Court decision
Yes.
in which the United States Supreme Court decided, in a case called Roe v. Wade, that states could not criminalize abortion as they were doing, that would be unconstitutional because a woman has a constitutional right to choose abortion.
Yes.
It's a fundamental right, and that right cannot be restricted in the first 3 months of her pregnancy, and in the second 3 months it may be able to be regulated, maybe in the last 3 months, depending if the fetus is viable or not. It may or may not be prohibited, but the point is that was really important because pre-Roe v. Wade, states were criminalizing abortion. What they were doing mainly was they were, beside putting roadblocks in the way of women who wanted to have an abortion legally, they would also make it a crime for a doctor to perform an abortion, that is a licensed healthcare provider. So what that meant was that women who wanted abortions would need to get an abortion from an unlicensed healthcare provider. In other words, somebody who's just doing it for the money.
Right.
So that, or, of course, wealthy women, which I was not, could go to another country or maybe to another state where it was legal. But poor women, young women, rural women could not afford to do that. And so often they had to go to an unlicensed healthcare provider like I did
Right.
and risk their lives. And some of them died, some of them were maimed from illegal abortions.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so committed to making sure that abortion is safe, legal, affordable, and available. Unfortunately, today we are back again in witnessing many states attempting to challenge Roe v. Wade, that is, passing restrictions, putting burdens on healthcare clinics in order to stop women from getting abortions, but it's just putting women's lives and health at risk.
Right. And you also know this firsthand because your life was put in danger.
I do. Well, because I had an abortion by an unlicensed healthcare person. Well, actually, he wasn't a healthcare person at all. He was just a stranger.
Really?
And but he certainly wasn't licensed,
Right.
and so he left me to hemorrhage in a bathtub, and so I almost died. I was taken to the hospital when I had 106-degree fever and packed in ice. So fortunately for me, I lived, but you know, I did learn from that. It's a teaching moment, and the teaching moment was that I believe that abortion should be safe and affordable and legal and available. And this is a time now where literally we're talking about a life or death decision, because some of these cases from some of these states are going to work themselves up, potentially the Supreme Court, if the
Right.
Supreme Court of the United States accepts those cases, which they may do. And if they don't, well, some of the restrictions may still be in place now. In reality, women have a hard time in some states finding any abortion clinic at all. Even though it's still legal,
Right.
there may be only one clinic in the state. And some women don't even have the bus fare to get to that clinic because it's hundreds of miles away from them. And so this is what the anti-choice forces are doing, what I call them the mandatory motherhood forces that think that, you know, a fertilized egg should have more rights than an adult woman. This is what they're doing. They think they're going to prevent abortions. They're not going to prevent them. They're just going to mean that women's lives are at risk because they're going to find someone to do the abortion if they can, and then they may hemorrhage or die from the infection by people who don't know how to do it safely. Or they'll be forced to take a pregnancy to term.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens to a lot of young women
Yes.
who are not in a position to really take care of those children.
Well, and I thought I was also struck by the words of the nurse that spoke to you afterward. And I think she said, "I hope you've learned your lesson,"
Yes.
which
Yes,
is
and
just unfathomable.
Exactly. Well, it's not unfathomable to think that, of course, there are nurses that, you know, have certain beliefs
Right.
against the right to choose abortion. But to say that to a young woman who literally has gone to the hospital, and the only time they took us in the hospital in those days
Mm-hmm.
was if we were bleeding to death.
Right.
Not to have the abortion, but only kind of afterwards, then you could go. I never forgot those words
No.
because it was just, you know, something that it was just so inappropriate at that time.
Yeah. Well, and I thought the irony of it was you did learn a lesson from that. And it wasn't the lesson that she wanted you to learn. It was that you were going to make it